If the king wishes to live, he can pray to the moon. I owe him nothing. Let him die. The moon gave him a mate and he threw her away. 3 years ago, Alpha King Dracovar rejected his fated mate for political power. Now he's dying from poison, and only her blood can save him. But why should the woman he discarded bleed for the man who chose an empire over her heart? Chapter 1. Blood. That's what she smelled first, dear blood, warm and metallic on the morning air. Next came the satisfaction. Clean, quick, no suffering. Nyxara's silver wolf padded through snow-laden pines, the massive deer's throat torn with surgical precision. Her human mind appreciated the efficiency. Her wolf felt nothing. And that was the problem. 3 years ago, the hunt would have sung in her bones. Now, even killing felt empty. She shifted back to human form, her naked skin barely registering the mountain cold. Scars crisscrossed her lean frame, reminders of the night they killed her. The trading post squatted like a diseased mushroom against the forest edge. Smoke curled from its chimney, carrying scents of unwashed bodies and desperation. Perfect. No one asked questions here. Fresh meat, she announced, dropping the deer carcass on the counter. Old Henrik didn't look up from counting copper coins. His fingers were black with grime, and he smelled like sour ale and regret. Price went up. Shadow wolves been hitting the trade routes. Nyxara's jaw tightened. Shadow wolves. Stories parents told to scare children into obedience. Yet Henrik's fear felt real sharp and acrid in the air. How much? Her voice carried no warmth. She'd learned that warmth invited questions, and questions led to discovery. 4 silvers. Take it or starve. She slapped the coins down harder than necessary. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the cramped space. Henrik finally looked up, his roomy eyes catching on her storm-gray gaze. Mountain clan eyes, he muttered, then paled. Thought your kind was all gone. King wiped out most of the high packs years back. A cold wire tightened in her chest. Her wolf stirred for the first time in months, a dangerous rumble of warning. Mountain clans adapt, she said softly. Too softly. Henrik shoved her supplies across the counter. Course they do. Just careful out there. Heard strange things lately. The bells above the door chimed as she pushed outside. Behind her, Henrik muttered something about ghosts and bad omens. If only he knew. Back in the forest, she loaded her pack with mechanical precision. Each movement was calculated, efficient, empty. That's when she heard it. Voices drifting on the wind, carried from the trading post. The Alpha King's dying. Ravager venom, they say. Only one person could save him, but she's dead and buried. The voice laughed bitterly. Good thing too. After what he did to her people, let him rot. Nyxara's hands stilled on her pack. Her wolf pressed forward, ears pricked. Somewhere, deep in her chest, something that felt suspiciously like satisfaction bloomed. Let him rot indeed. But as she shouldered her pack and headed deeper into the mountains, a sharp hook twisted beneath her sternum. The mate bond supposedly severed when he rejected her pulsed once. Weak, distant, dying. She smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't a pleasant expression.
The throne room felt like a tomb. Dracovar pressed his palm against his chest, feeling the black veins pulse beneath his royal robes. The Ravager venom spread like poison ink through his system, and each heartbeat brought him closer to the edge. Fitting, he thought. A poisoned king for a poisoned kingdom. His political bride, beautiful, wealthy, strategically perfect, had brought him 3 new territories, and a death sentence wrapped in golden wedding gifts. The ceremonial goblets they'd drunk from on their wedding night should have sealed his empire. Instead, they'd sealed his fate. Your Majesty, Chancellor Aldrich's voice cut through his brooding. The older man stood near the massive windows, his face carefully neutral. The healers are requesting another audience. Dracovar almost laughed. The healers. As if their poultices and prayers could cure what his own choices had wrought. Tell them what I've told them every day for the past month, he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. There is no cure, but there had been. The thought struck him like a physical blow. Nyxara's blood, her moon-blessed, mate-marked blood that could neutralize any poison because it was entwined with his very essence. The woman he'd discarded for the promise of an empire. The woman he'd exiled because killing a fated mate would have cursed him too. Smart, practical, efficient, and now she was probably laughing wherever she was hiding. Your Majesty, Aldrich's voice carried worry now. The Shadow Wolf attacks are increasing. Without strong leadership, I know. Dracovar's fingers curled around the armrests of his seat. The golden wolf heads carved into the stone seemed to mock him. He'd built this room to intimidate, to showcase power. Now it felt like an elaborate coffin. Through the mate bond he'd tried so hard to sever, he felt something, a flicker of attention, of awareness. His breath caught. For 3 years, that connection had been silent, dead. He'd assumed she'd found a way to cut it completely, or that distance had finally severed what his rejection had damaged. But now, she knows, he realized. Somehow, she knows I'm dying, and the emotion that came through that fragile thread wasn't love or concern or forgiveness. It was satisfaction, dark, bitter satisfaction that made his chest ache with something far worse than poison. He'd taught her exactly what she was worth to him. Now she was returning the lesson. Cancel all audiences for the rest of the day, he ordered, rising on unsteady legs. But Your Majesty. Now, Aldrich bowed and retreated, leaving Dracovar alone with his monuments to ambition and his dying heart. He pressed his hand to his chest again, feeling his wolf spirit pulling away from his human soul. Soon, the venom would complete its work. His wolf would die first, leaving him a hollow shell. Efficient, he thought bitterly, just like everything else I've done. But as darkness crept around the edges of his vision, one thought echoed in his mind. I deserve this.
The scream tore through her sleep like claws through silk. Nyxara bolted upright in her cave dwelling, heart hammering against her ribs. The nightmare clung to her like smoke, Dracovar's golden eyes watching her death with cold calculation, while his political bride smiled behind a jeweled fan. Just a dream. But her throat ached where they'd cut deep enough to draw convincing blood for the staged attack. She touched the scar, feeling raised flesh that would never fully heal. They'd been thorough, professional. She'd nearly bled out for real before the healer they'd bribed had discovered she was still alive. The efficiency still burned. He'd valued his empire more than her life, but he'd been too practical to actually kill her. Exile was cleaner, less cursed. Let the mountain wolf disappear into the wilderness where she belongs. Outside her cave, wind howled through the pines like a warning. Her wolf stirred uneasily, sensing something wrong in the natural order. Then she heard them voices drifting up from the valley below. Tracks lead this direction. Female wolf. Silver markings. You sure she's alive? Been 3 years since the staged attack. King's dying. Healers say only the original mate's blood can save him. Council's desperate enough to check every rumor. Nyxara's blood turned to ice. She crept to the cave mouth, peering down at the cluster of royal guards making camp near the stream. Torchlight flickered off armor and weapons. They weren't just searching, they were hunting. What if we find her? A younger guard asked. Think she'll cooperate? After what he did? The captain, a grizzled man with scars covering his face, spat into the fire. The king needs blood. She's just a vessel. Grab her, bleed her, dump her. Simple. Vessel. Her wolf snarled silently. They planned to drag her back to the capital, chain her to a table, and drain her like livestock to save the man who'd discarded her. Let him die, she thought savagely. Let his precious empire crumble. But even as fury blazed through her, a hollow ache spread beneath her ribs. The mate bond, damaged but not destroyed, carried echoes of his suffering. Her wolf whined at the sensation, confused by the instinctive need to help their dying mate. He's not our mate, she reminded the beast. He chose gold over us. Remember? The wolf remembered. But wolves were simple creatures. They felt pain and wanted to end it, even when logic screamed otherwise. From the camp below, the captain's voice carried on the wind. Check every cave, every den, every hiding spot. She's up here somewhere, and when we find her. He smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. Well, dead queens don't need to stay dead if the kingdom requires it. Nyxara melted back into her cave, mind racing. They'd find her by morning. Her scent was too strong to hide completely. She had maybe 6 hours to disappear deeper into the mountains. Or, her gaze fell on the silver knife she used for hunting. Sharp, efficient, fatal if used correctly. She could end this. End the bond, the pain, the constant reminder of what she'd lost. One quick cut, and she'd bleed out before they found her. Problem solved. But as she reached for the blade, something stopped her. Coward. a voice whispered. Running away again? Just like he expected? Her hand stilled. Below, guards moved through the forest like hunting hounds on a scent. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to show the Alpha King exactly what his discarded vessel had become. Dawn broke like spilled blood across the mountain peaks. Nyxara crouched at her cave mouth, watching shadows move through the forest below. 6 guards, maybe 7. They moved with military precision, closing the net she'd seen them cast all night. Time to go. She turned to gather her pack and froze. Hello, Nyxara. The voice belonged to Marcus Thorne, beta of her old pack, the man who'd held her down while they cut her throat. He stood in her cave entrance, blocking her escape route. Behind him, more guards emerged from the shadows like deadly flowers blooming in reverse. They'd climbed the cliff face. Smart. Marcus. Her voice came out steady. Good. Still taking orders from kings who throw away their mates? His weathered face didn't flinch. Orders are orders. And your conscience? She shifted slightly, calculating distances. The cave had another exit, but they'd probably found that too. Does that still take orders? My conscience keeps the kingdom from falling to shadow wolves. He gestured, and iron chains appeared in his hands. Special alloy. Hurts shifters. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Don't make this harder. Like she was the unreasonable one. Her wolf surged forward, demanding blood, demanding vengeance. 3 years of buried rage rose in her throat like bile. You think I'll just cooperate? She laughed, and the sound echoed off cave walls like breaking glass. After what he did, after what you helped him do, I think you'll do what's right. Marcus stepped closer, chains gleaming. Innocent people are dying while he weakens. You can save them. I can let him rot. Yes, his admission surprised her. You can, but that's not who you are, isn't it? Before she could decide, her wolf made the choice for her. She shifted mid-lunge, silver fur rippling as human bones reshaped themselves into something deadlier. Marcus was ready. The chains wrapped around her mid-leap, iron burning through fur to the skin beneath. Pain exploded through her system, not just physical, but something deeper. The metal was designed to disrupt shifter magic. She crashed to the cave floor, thrashing against bonds that only tightened with struggle. Easy, Marcus murmured. Easy, girl. Fight's over. Girl. Like she was still the frightened Pac Omega who'd needed his protection. More guards poured into the cave. Rough hands hauled her upright, chains clicking as they secured her arms behind her back. Transport's waiting, someone reported. King's orders are to bring her alive and functional. Functional. Another word for intact enough to bleed. As they dragged her from the cave, Marcus leaned close. For what it's worth, he whispered. I'm sorry. She wanted to spit in his face. Instead, she smiled the same cold expression she'd worn when Henrik mentioned dead queens. You will be, she promised. But even as rage burned through her, something else stirred. Deep in her chest, that hollow ache pulsed stronger. He's dying, her traitorous heart whispered. Our mate is dying. Good, she snarled back. Yet as they carried her down the mountain, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking toward something far worse than death. She was walking toward a choice she wasn't ready to make.
The war room felt like a mausoleum. Dracovar slumped in his chair, watching Chancellor Aldrich pace before tactical maps that might as well have been children's drawings. Every border showed red markers, shadow wolf incursions, failed patrols, villages gone silent. His empire was crumbling, and it was all his fault. The Eastern Territories report increased activity, Aldrich was saying. 3 more villages evacuated. The western trade routes are completely compromised. Each word hammered into Dracovar's skull like nails. The venom made concentration nearly impossible. But the guilt? That remained crystal clear. This is what ambition costs, he thought. This is the price of choosing power over love. Your Majesty, Aldrich paused his pacing. The search team sent word. They found her. Dracovar's heart stopped. Actually stopped. For 3 heartbeats, he felt nothing. No pulse, no pain, no venom, eating him alive. Then everything crashed back at once. Where? The word came out strangled. The northern mountains. Marcus Thorne's team secured her an hour ago. She's resistant. Of course she is. After what he'd done to her, he'd be surprised if she didn't try to gut him the moment she saw him. Through their damaged bond, he felt something new. Not just that distant ache, actual emotion. Rage, mostly. Bitter satisfaction. And underneath it all, something that might have been fear. She's scared, he realized. Not of him, of herself, of what she might choose to do. How long until she arrives? He stood on unsteady legs, black veins pulsing visibly beneath his skin. 6 hours, maybe less. Aldrich's expression was carefully neutral. Your Majesty, the healers want to prepare the ritual chamber. They'll need direct access. Direct access. Such polite words for what amounted to chaining her to an altar and opening her veins. And if she refuses? Aldrich's silence was answer enough. We'll force her. The unspoken truth hung between them like poison gas. We'll strap her down and bleed her dry to save the kingdom. To save him. Dracovar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his choices crushing down like avalanche stone. He'd built his empire on calculated cruelties, used people like chess pieces, discarded love for power. Now that same efficiency would destroy the one person who could save him. Perfect symmetry, he thought bitterly. Sir, Aldrich ventured, should I have them prepare? No. The word came out harder than intended. No ritual chamber, no restraints. When she arrives, bring her to the throne room. But Your Majesty, if she refuses, then I die. He opened his eyes, meeting Aldrich's shocked stare, and maybe that's exactly what I deserve. Through the bond, he felt her getting closer, felt her rage building like storm clouds on the horizon. 6 hours, he thought. 6 hours until I face the consequences of every choice I've made. He'd spent 3 years building walls around the guilt. Now those walls were crumbling just like everything else. And for the first time since the venom had started its deadly work, Dracovar wondered if dying might actually be easier than living with what he'd done, especially if she has to watch.
The throne room doors opened like the gates of hell. Nyxara stumbled forward, iron chains burning against her wrists. The grand hall stretched before her, all marble and gold and calculated intimidation. Exactly what she remembered from the night he'd rejected her. 3 years, she thought. 3 years since I last stood here. The last time, she'd been wearing a simple white dress, hope bright in her chest like a candle flame. Now, prison rags and chains. How fitting. Court nobles lined the walls, their faces a mixture of shock and barely concealed hunger. Word had spread fast the dead queen lived. The king's salvation walked among them in shackles. Look at them, her wolf snarled. See how they stare? Like you're meat for sale. Which, essentially, she was. Presenting Lady Nyxara Nightfall, the herald announced. Former mate to His Majesty, return to us in the kingdom's hour of need. Former mate. Even now, they couldn't bring themselves to say rejected mate. Too honest for royal proclamations. The crowd murmured excitement, anticipation, vulgar curiosity about the woman who'd supposedly died for love. If only they knew, she thought bitterly. I didn't die for love. I died for convenience. Then she saw him. Dracovar sat slumped on his golden throne, and her breath caught despite every wall she'd built. He looked terrible. Gaunt cheeks, hollow eyes, black veins visible through pale skin like poison ink. He's dying, the mate bond whispered. Our mate is dying. Good, she snarled back, but the word felt hollow now, faced with the reality of his condition. Their eyes met across the vast room, and something cracked in her chest. Not forgiveness, never that, but recognition. They were both ghosts now, both hollow shells of what they'd once been. Nyxara, his voice carried across the throne room, rough with exhaustion. You look, well. She almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she lifted her chin and spoke loud enough for every noble, every guard, every curious courtier to hear. I look like someone who survived being thrown away. Her voice rang off marble walls like a bell tolling. You, on the other hand, look exactly like what you are. A king who chose gold over his soul and discovered that empires make poor bedfellows. Gasps echoed through the hall. Nobles exchanged shocked glances. No one spoke to the king like that. No one. Except the woman he murdered, she thought savagely. I'm already dead. What's the worst he can do? Dracovar's mouth curved in something that might have been a smile. Still sharp-tongued, I see. Some things never change. Others do. She rattled her chains deliberately. For instance, I used to love you. Now I'd rather watch you rot on that pretty throne you valued more than my heart. There. The truth, naked and bleeding between them. Let the court choke on it. The kingdom needs, Chancellor Aldrich began. The kingdom can burn. She cut him off without looking away from Dracovar. You want my blood? You want me to save the man who had me killed for political convenience? Then get on your knees and beg. The throne room erupted. Nobles shouted outrage. Guards stepped forward. Aldrich's face went purple with apoplexy. But Dracovar just watched her with those hollow golden eyes. And if I did? He asked quietly. If I got on my knees and begged your forgiveness, would you save me? The question hung between them like a blade. Nyxara felt the weight of every stare, every held breath, every desperate hope that she would be reasonable, merciful, good. She smiled the same cold expression she'd perfected in 3 years of isolation. Ask me in 6 months when you're dying, she said. Maybe by then, I'll care enough to spit on your grave. The silence that followed was deafening, and in that silence, she heard the sound of her own heart breaking all over again. The guest quarters felt like a gilded cage. Nyxara paced the marble floor, every step echoing her fury. Silk tapestries, golden fixtures, a bed soft enough to drown in, all of it screaming wealth and privilege, everything he'd chosen over her. Ironic, she thought bitterly. He's housing me better as his prisoner than he ever did as his mate. Through the walls, she could hear courtiers whispering. The dead queen walks. The king's salvation refuses to bleed. What will become of the kingdom? Let them whisper, her wolf snarled. Let them wonder. That's when the pain hit. It started as pressure, like someone pressing a heated blade against her sternum. Then it exploded outward, stealing her breath and dropping her to her knees. What? Through their damaged bond, she felt it. Dracovar's agony as the venom surged through his system, his wolf clawing at the inside of his chest, trying to escape the poison eating them both alive. No, she gasped, pressing her palm flat against marble. No, I won't. Another wave crashed over her. This time she felt his confusion, his desperate fight against the inevitable. The way his human consciousness kept slipping away from his wolf, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. He's dying, the bond whispered. Right now, this moment. Her wolf whined, pressing forward with instinctive need. Go to him, help him, heal him. He threw us away, she reminded the beast. Remember? We're worthless to him. But the pain kept coming. Wave after wave of agony that wasn't hers, couldn't be hers, yet felt more real than her own heartbeat. She crawled to the window, hauling herself upright against the sill. Outside, palace gardens stretched toward moonlit mountains. Escape route. If she could just crash. The sound came from somewhere deep in the palace, something heavy hitting marble, something falling, someone falling. Through the bond, she felt his consciousness flicker like a candle in wind. For a moment, everything went dark. Then faintly his wolf howled. Not in pain this time, but in terror. The cry of something lost, alone, dying in the dark. Her wolf answered before she could stop it. A mournful harmony that rose from her throat without permission. Damn it. She pressed her forehead against cold glass. Damn you, Dracovar. Even dying. You're still destroying me. But she didn't move toward the door. Didn't run to his aid. Instead, she sank to the floor and wrapped her arms around her knees, feeling every flutter of his fading pulse like a countdown to her own destruction. Let him die, she whispered. Let him die and end this. Yet even as she spoke the words, her wolf kept vigil, listening, waiting, ready to answer the next howl, whether she wanted to or not.
The healer's chamber reeked of desperation and failed hope. Dracovar lay bare-chested on the examination table, black veins spreading across his skin like a diseased spiderweb. Each pulse sent poison deeper into his system, and each breath felt like swallowing glass. The progression has accelerated, Master Healer Corin announced, his voice carefully neutral. The venom has reached the cardiac chamber. Separation between human and wolf consciousness will begin within days. Days, not months, not weeks, days. Around the table, healers exchanged meaningful glances. They'd brought him here to demonstrate his condition to Nyxara, to show her exactly what her refusal would cost. Manipulation, he thought wearily. Even dying, I'm still playing political games. The chamber doors opened with a whisper of silk and steel. Guards entered first. followed by a figure that made his poisoned heart stutter. Nyxara. She moved like liquid shadow, storm-gray eyes taking in every detail with predatory assessment. When her gaze fell on his exposed chest, on the black veins mapping his approaching death, something flickered across her face. Not pity, not love. Something harder to define. Satisfaction? No. That wasn't quite right either. Understanding, he realized. She's seeing the consequences of my choices made manifest. Your Majesty, Corin addressed Nyxara with careful respect. As you can see, the Ravager venom has advanced beyond normal treatment. It was introduced through ceremonial goblets during His Majesty's wedding feast. Wedding feast. The words hung in the air like accusation. She'd heard about his political marriage, of course. Probably knew every detail of how he'd celebrated gaining 3 new territories, how he'd toasted the bride he'd chosen over her. Fitting, Nyxara said quietly. Poisoned by wedding gifts. There's poetry in that. Her voice was steady, but through their bond, he caught something else. A flicker of, was that regret, or just tired resignation? The venom separates shifter souls, Corin continued. Human consciousness dies first, leaving only the wolf mad, alone, trapped in a human body that can't sustain it. Show her the horror, Dracovar thought bitterly. Make her understand what her mercy could prevent. But Nyxara just nodded, as if Corin had described the weather. And only mate blood can cure it? She asked. Original mate blood, yes. The moon's blessing creates a unique compatibility that, I understand the theory. She stepped closer to the table, and Dracovar caught her scent, pine smoke and winter air, untamed things he'd tried to forget. What I'm wondering is whether you've considered alternatives. Alternatives? Hope fluttered in his chest like a dying bird. Such as, Corin prompted. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. Amputation. The word fell like a stone into still water. Healers gasped. Guards shifted uneasily. Dracovar almost laughed. Of course. She wasn't suggesting mercy, she was suggesting surgery. Cut out the poisoned parts and let him live as a cripple. Efficient, he thought. Just like everything I taught her. That would, Corin stammered. Your Majesty would survive. But he'd be weak, Nyxara finished. Broken, unable to rule effectively. The kingdom would need new leadership. And there it is, the real lesson. She wasn't just refusing to save him, she was offering to replace him. Through their bond, he felt her cold satisfaction. She'd learned his lessons well. Power was everything. Sentiment was weakness. Love was just another tool to be discarded when convenient. I created this, he realized. I made her into exactly what I am. The thought should have filled him with regret. Instead, he felt something that might have been pride. Look what you became, he thought, studying her marble-perfect composure. Look how strong you are without me. Maybe destroying her had been the kindest thing he'd ever done.
The War Council felt like a funeral planning session. Nyxara stood at the back of the strategy room, still in chains but allowed to observe. Around the massive oak table, generals and advisors bent over maps, marked with red ink, every mark representing another failure, another village lost. Let them panic, she thought. This is what choosing power over love gets you. The eastern border is completely compromised, General Hawthorne reported, his scarred face grim. Shadow wolves took 3 settlements overnight. No survivors. No survivors. The words echoed in her mind like a death knell. Whatever satisfaction she'd felt at Dracovar's suffering curdled into something uglier. Those were innocent people. Families. Children who'd never chosen anything more dangerous than what to have for breakfast. They're testing our defenses, another general added, probing for weakness while His Majesty recovers. While His Majesty dies. Everyone thought, but didn't say. Chancellor Aldrich cleared his throat. Perhaps it's time to consider alternative leadership structures. The room went quiet. Outside, rain lashed against windows like claws seeking entry. You mean succession, Hawthorne said flatly. I mean survival. Aldrich's voice carried the weight of a man making hard choices. The kingdom needs strong leadership. If His Majesty cannot provide it. Nyxara felt rather than saw every gaze shift toward her. The dead queen, the king's potential salvation, the woman who could save them all if she chose to. Look at them, her wolf observed. See how quickly they abandoned their dying king? But even as cynicism washed through her, something else stirred. These people flawed, frightened. Political creatures, though they were genuinely cared about protecting innocents. More than he ever did, she thought bitterly. What about the Northern Territories? She asked, surprising herself by speaking. The room turned toward her like flowers seeking sunlight. Lost, Hawthorne admitted. Shadow wolves hit the mining settlements first, cut off our supply lines. Strategic, she noted. Not random attacks. Coordinated assault designed to cripple the kingdom systematically. They know, she said quietly. Know what? Aldrich prompted. They know about him. She nodded toward where Dracovar would normally sit, the empty chair at the table's head. About his condition. They're timing this perfectly. Through their bond, she felt his awareness spike. Even dying, he was sharp enough to follow strategy discussions. Of course he is, she thought. Politics was always more important to him than breathing. The Shadow Wolves want the kingdom weak, she continued, pieces clicking together in her mind. They want the king dead and the succession unclear. Maximum chaos for minimum effort. And they know about you, General Hawthorne said slowly. About what you could do to save him. There it is. The real trap. She wasn't just being asked to save Dracovar's life, she was being asked to save the kingdom he'd built on her grave. Poetic justice, she mused. He throws me away to build an empire. Now that empire can only be saved by the woman he discarded. They're watching, she said aloud. Waiting to see what I choose. If I save him, the kingdom stabilizes and they lose their advantage. If I let him die. Civil war, Aldrich finished grimly. Multiple claimants to the throne. Shadow wolves walk into a fractured kingdom. Thousands dead. Innocents slaughtered. Children who never hurt anyone paying for his greed with their blood. Her wolf stirred uneasily. These weren't abstract political consequences, these were real people who would suffer for choices they'd never made. Not your responsibility, she reminded herself. Not your kingdom. Not your problem. But even as she thought it, she remembered Henrik's frightened face. The young guard's questions about whether she'd cooperate. The healer's desperate explanations about venom separation. They were all afraid. All looking to her for salvation they had no right to expect. The dead queen, risen to save the kingdom that killed her. The room waited for her response. Outside, thunder rolled like approaching war drums. What would he do? She wondered. In my position, with this choice, what would the great manipulator choose? The answer came with cold clarity. Whatever served him best. Maybe it was time to learn from his lessons. The royal wing felt like walking through a graveyard of memories. Nyxara moved down marble corridors flanked by guards who pretended she wasn't a prisoner. For your protection, they'd said. Shadow wolves specifically hunt for you. Convenient, she thought. Nothing like external threats to justify keeping your potential savior locked up. Her new quarters sat 3 doors from Dracovar's chambers. Close enough that every labored breath, every suppressed groan of pain, every restless shift in his bed echoed through their bond like hammer blows. Deliberate, her wolf noted. They want you to feel every moment of his suffering. And it was working. She pressed her palm against the wall separating them, feeling the steady rhythm of his weakening heartbeat. Lub-dub, lub, dub, lub, dub. Each pause lasted longer than the last. He's fading, the bond whispered. Tonight, maybe. Tomorrow at most. Good, she told herself automatically. But the word tasted like ash. Through their connection, she felt his dreams fevered visions where he called her name in empty corridors. Where he reached for her across vast distances. Always too late. Always falling short. Guilt dreams, she realized. He's drowning in regret. The knowledge should have satisfied her. Instead, it left her feeling hollow. Because you're tied to him, her wolf observed. When he dies, part of you dies too. The weak part, she snarled back. The part that still believes in love, but even as she rejected the bond's pull, her body betrayed her. When his pain spiked, hers followed. When his breathing hitched, she found herself holding her breath. This is torture, she realized. They're torturing us both. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. My lady, a servant's voice. Carefully respectful. Chancellor Aldrich requests your presence in the strategy room. Strategy room, not throne room or healer's chamber. They wanted her input, not her blood. Interesting. Tell the Chancellor I'll consider his request, she called back. When I'm ready. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let them remember that dead queens don't take orders. But as she spoke, another wave of pain crashed through the bond. This time, she couldn't suppress the gasp that escaped her lips. Through the wall, she heard Dracovar's voice weak, barely audible. Nyxara. Just her name. Nothing else. But the way he said it like a prayer, like an apology, like a goodbye made something crack inside her chest. He's calling for you, the bond urged. Go to him. He can die alone, she replied. Just like he left me to do. But she didn't move away from the wall, and when his breathing evened out again, she found herself still listening, still counting heartbeats, still wondering if tomorrow would bring silence.
Death had a scent, copper and roses, fading dreams and final truths. Dracovar recognized it from a dozen battlefields, 100 political executions. Now it clung to him like expensive perfume, marking him as one of the condemned. How fitting, he thought. Death by irony. Moonlight streamed through his chamber windows, painting everything silver bright. Like her fur, his dying mind whispered. Like her eyes when she trusted you. Through their bond, he felt her presence 3 walls away. Felt her fighting the connection even as it tore at them both. She's in pain because of me, he realized. Even now, I'm still hurting her. The venom had reached his brain. Soon, coherent thought would be impossible. This might be his last chance to what? Apologize? Beg forgiveness? Make excuses? No. He was done with lies. Tell her the truth, his conscience whispered. All of it. Let her decide if she wants to save a man who finally knows what he destroyed. His door stood slightly ajar, servants checking on him throughout the night. He could hear her pacing in her chambers, could smell her anger and confusion through the walls. Now or never. Nyxara, he called softly. The pacing stopped. She's listening. I know you can hear me, he continued, his voice carrying through the quiet corridor. I know you're fighting whether to let me die. Silence. But through the bond, he felt her attention like a physical weight. She's listening, he repeated to himself. She wants to hear this. I lied, he said into the darkness. Not about the political marriage that was exactly what it seemed. I lied about my reasons. A floorboard creaked. She's moving closer. I didn't reject you to protect anyone, he continued, each word scraping his throat raw. I rejected you because I was a fool drunk on dreams of conquest. I wanted to be legendary, the king who ruled everything. And you, say it, say the truth that's been eating you alive. You were inconvenient. The words fell like stones into still water. Through the bond, he felt her shock, then blazing fury. Good, be angry. It's easier than being hurt. Your pack offered me nothing. He pressed on, driven by a need she understood completely. No armies, no gold, no strategic advantage. She brought me 3 territories, trade routes that would make me the most powerful king in history. The whole truth, Dracovar. Give her all of it. I thought love was weakness. Thought mate bonds were chains that would hold me back from greatness. I wanted to conquer the world. And you. His voice cracked. You reminded me that some things couldn't be conquered, only cherished. Through their connection, he felt her approaching his door, felt her war between rage and something deeper. She's going to come in, he realized. She needs to see my face when I destroy myself completely. So I threw you away, he whispered. Like garbage, like something worthless that was cluttering up my path to glory. The door opened. Nyxara stood silhouetted in moonlight, storm-gray eyes reflecting silver fire. She looked like an avenging angel, beautiful, terrible, and utterly beyond his reach. And now, she asked quietly, now that your empire is crumbling, now that your golden throne feels like a tomb, was it worth it, Dracovar? Was I worth trading for 3 territories? He met her gaze and gave her the only truth he had left. No, he said, nothing was worth losing you. I sit on a throne of gold and rule over ashes, and all I can think about is how warm your laugh used to be. How safe I felt when you looked at me like I was worth something. There, he thought, the complete truth. I chose an empire over love, and the empire means nothing without her. She stared at him for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was deadly soft. Good, she said. I hope that knowledge burns you alive. Then she turned and walked away, leaving him alone with his dying heart and the weight of what he'd destroyed. But through their bond, he felt something new. Not forgiveness, never that, but a terrible understanding. She knows now, he realized. She knows exactly what my choices cost us both. It wasn't redemption, but it was truth, and maybe that was enough.
War came at midnight with the sound of screaming. Nyxara jolted awake to chaos, alarm bells, running footsteps, the metallic scent of blood on the wind. Through her window, she saw orange flames painting the palace gardens in hellish light. Attack. Her wolf surged forward, battle-ready. But iron chains still bound her wrists, and her door was locked from the outside. Trapped, she realized. They've locked me in a cage while the palace burns. Heavy footsteps pounded past her door. Shouts echoed down corridors. Shadow wolves in the courtyard. They've breached the outer walls. Where's the king? Where's the king indeed? She thought grimly. Probably too weak to stand, let alone fight. Through their bond, she felt his struggle, desperate attempts to rise from his sickbed, to command his forces, to be the leader his kingdom needed. Each effort sent waves of agony through his poisoned system, and through mine, she realized as pain lanced through her chest. A new sound reached her ears, not human screams, but something else. Howling, deep, primal calls that raised every hair on her body. Shadow wolves, her wolf whispered. Hunting. The howls were answered by others. Closer. They were inside the palace now. They're coming for me, she understood with cold clarity. They know I'm here. Know I'm the key to everything. Her door exploded inward. Not guards, shadow wolves in human form. 3 of them, moving like liquid darkness, eyes like black holes, skin that seemed to absorb light. The dead queen, the leader spoke, his voice like grinding stone. How convenient. You've saved us the trouble of hunting you. Hunting me? What do you want? She asked, backing toward the window. What we've always wanted. He smiled, revealing teeth like obsidian daggers. The kingdom. And you're going to help us take it. Me? I'm chained in a cell. How exactly? By dying, he interrupted pleasantly. Your death ensures the king dies too. No cure, no hope, no rallying point for resistance. Simple, of course. They didn't want her to save Dracovar, they wanted to eliminate the possibility completely. Kill the cure, guarantee the disease spreads. There's just one problem, she said, her wolf rising to meet the threat. I don't die easily. The shadow wolf laughed. We've heard, but chains have a way of limiting one's options. True. But chains worked both ways. She lunged backward, shattering the window with her body. Glass sliced through clothes and skin, but she was falling, 3 stories down toward garden stones. Better to die on my terms than theirs. But she didn't die. She landed wrong, ankle snapping, ribs cracking but alive. Around her, palace gardens burned with unnatural fire that cast no shadows. Shadow wolf magic, she realized. Fire that eats light. Above, her pursuers appeared in the broken window. Below, she heard more howling, the pack calling to each other, coordinating the hunt. They're everywhere. Through the bond, she felt Dracovar's desperation spike. He knew she was in danger, knew she was hurt and alone, and about to die. And he can't help, she thought. Too weak to save himself, let alone me. Perfect symmetry. We'll die together but apart. Fitting end for a broken love story. But as shadow wolves began descending the palace walls like hunting spiders, something else stirred in her chest. Not the bond this time. Something purely her own. Rage. How dare they? Her wolf snarled. How dare they think we're easy prey? Chains or no chains, broken bones or not, she was still a daughter of the mountain clans. Still a silver wolf with fangs like winter moonlight. Let them hunt, she thought, shifting despite the iron burning her skin. Let's see what they catch. The first shadow wolf hit the ground running. Nyxara was ready for him. Blood painted the garden stones silver under moonlight. Nyxara crouched beside the shadow wolf's corpse, her broken ribs screaming with each breath. The fight had been brutal, chains limiting her movement, while claws and fangs sought her throat. But mountain wolves didn't die easy. One down, her wolf noted with satisfaction. How many more hunting us? Too many. Howls echoed through the burning palace grounds, coordinating the pack's search. They'd find her soon enough. Move, she commanded her battered body. Find shelter. Find help. But as she limped through smoke-filled corridors, something stopped her cold. Crying. Soft, terrified sobs coming from behind an overturned marble bench. She crept closer, chains rattling, and found them 3 palace servants huddled together like lost children. The scullery maid who'd brought her bread, an elderly groundskeeper with gentle hands, a boy who couldn't be more than 14, still wearing his kitchen apprentice apron. Innocents, her wolf observed. They never chose this war. Please, the maid whispered when she saw Nyxara. Please don't let them find us. Them, shadow wolves, hunting through the palace like predators in a henhouse, killing anyone they found. Not your problem, the bitter part of her insisted. Not your kingdom, not your responsibility. But looking at their terrified faces, seeing the boy's hands shake as he tried not to cry, something shifted in her chest. These people never threw you away, her wolf pointed out. Never chose power over love. They're just people, trying to survive, like you once were. Stay quiet, she whispered, positioning herself between them and the corridor. Stay hidden. What are you doing? The practical part of her demanded. You're injured, chained, outnumbered. You can't save them. Maybe not. But I can try. For 3 years, she'd focused only on survival, only on her own pain, her own anger, her own bitter satisfaction. When had she stopped caring about anyone else? When he threw you away, her wolf answered. When you decided love was weakness. But what if he was wrong? What if caring about others is what makes us strong? Footsteps echoed down the corridor, too heavy to be human. Shadow wolves, hunting by scent and sound. They'll find these people, kill them for sport. Unless... Nyxara stepped into the corridor, making herself visible, making herself bait. Looking for me? She called to the approaching darkness. Golden eyes emerged from shadows. 2 shadow wolves, moving with predatory grace. The dead queen walks, one purred. How convenient. Lead them away, she planned. Draw them from the innocents. But as she backed down the corridor, chains clanking with each step, she caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. Through a broken window, she could see the main courtyard, see palace guards fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. See bodies, so many bodies scattered across stones she'd once walked as a hopeful young woman. This is what my choice costs, she realized. Every moment I delay, more innocents die. Because without a strong king, the kingdom falls. And without my blood, there is no strong king. Dracovar's empire, crumbling because the woman he discarded won't save it. The shadow wolves were advancing, confident in their numerical advantage. Behind her, she could hear the servants' quiet breathing, still hidden, still alive. For now, through their bond, she felt Dracovar's desperation, felt him trying to rise from his sickbed, trying to command forces he was too weak to lead, felt his wolf howling in rage and helplessness. He's fighting, she realized. Even dying, he's still fighting for his people. The people he chose over you. No, her wolf corrected. The people who deserve protection regardless of his choices. That was the truth she'd been avoiding. This wasn't about Dracovar anymore. This was about the scullery maid who shared her bread, the groundskeeper who tended roses with gentle hands, the kitchen boy who reminded her of the brother she'd lost years ago. This is about who I choose to be. Victim or protector, bitter exile, or something more. The shadow wolves lunged. Nyxara met them with chains and fury, fighting not for a king who'd betrayed her, but for innocents who deserved better than dying for his mistakes. Maybe that's enough, she thought as claws raked her skin. Maybe protecting others is reason enough to bleed.
The war room had become a morgue for dying strategies. Dracovar slumped against the tactical table, black veins pulsing visibly beneath his skin. Each breath was agony, but consciousness was a luxury he couldn't afford to lose. Not while my kingdom burns. Around the table, his surviving generals looked like men planning their own funerals. Maps showed red everywhere. Shadow wolf positions, breached defenses, lost territories. Eastern walls are compromised, General Hawthorne reported, his scarred face grim. They're pouring through like floodwater. My fault, Dracovar thought. My weakness invited this. Through the bond, he felt Nyxara's pain, sharp spikes of agony that meant she was fighting for her life. Fighting alone because he was too weak to help her. She should have let me die 3 days ago, he realized. Should have spared herself this suffering. But even as self-recrimination ate at him, his tactical mind was working, analyzing patterns, seeking weaknesses in the enemy's assault. They want her alive, he understood. All this chaos, it's cover for capturing her. Sir? Chancellor Aldrich's voice cut through his brooding. The eastern gate won't hold much longer. We need to fall back to the inner palace. Fall back, strategic retreat, sound military doctrine. Also exactly what they want us to do. No, Dracovar said quietly. Your Majesty, think, damn you. Think like the king you used to be. They're hurting us, he said, forcing strength into his voice, driving us toward the inner palace where we'll be trapped, like wolves herding sheep toward a cliff. Through their bond, he felt Nyxara's battle fury spike, felt her protecting something or someone with desperate determination. She's not fighting for herself, he realized. She's protecting others. The knowledge hit him like a physical blow. Here he was, too weak to defend his own kingdom, while the woman he'd discarded was bleeding to save his people, the people he'd chosen over her. No, his conscience corrected, the people she's choosing over her own safety, because that's who she is, who she's always been, and you threw her away for gold. Sir? Hawthorne prompted again. Your orders? Dracovar forced himself upright, fighting waves of poison-induced nausea. Be the king they need, even if it kills you. Split our forces, he commanded, tactical clarity cutting through the venom fog. Main force holds the eastern gate, make them think we're committed to that position. Standard defense, predictable. Meanwhile, send strike teams through the servant passages, hit their flanks while they're focused on the gate. Use the palace's hidden arteries. Turn home ground advantage into weapon. And the queen? Aldrich asked carefully. Lady Nyxara is somewhere in the palace, fighting alone. The queen, not former mate or potential savior. Queen, because that's what she is, isn't it? She's fighting for this kingdom, with more courage than any crowned ruler. Through their bond, he felt her location northwest wing, near the servants' quarters, protecting the helpless, while his soldiers retreated. Of course she is. Send a strike team to her position, he ordered. Support, not extraction. Let her lead the fight, because she's already proven she's a better ruler than I ever was. Hawthorne nodded curtly and began issuing orders. Around the table, officers moved with renewed purpose, not because their king was strong, but because he was finally thinking clearly. Too late, Dracovar thought as another wave of venom sent fire through his veins. Too late for everything. But through their bond, he felt something new from Nyxara. Not love, never that again. But recognition. She knows I'm trying, he realized. Knows I'm fighting for something bigger than myself. Finally, it wasn't redemption. But it was a step toward becoming the man she'd once believed him to be, even if that man was dying with every heartbeat.
Steel rang against claw in the moonlit courtyard. Nyxara moved like liquid shadow, her silver wolf form weaving between shadow wolf attackers with deadly grace. Iron chains still bound her, burning through fur to skin, but rage made excellent anesthesia. Protect them, her wolf snarled. Protect the innocent. Behind her, palace guards formed a defensive line around civilians, servants, healers, anyone too weak or old to fight. The people Dracovar's kingdom was supposed to serve, the people worth bleeding for. A shadow wolf lunged at her flank. She twisted, catching his throat in her jaws and tasting darkness like bitter wine. He dissolved into smoke and malice, but two more took his place. Too many, she realized. We're being overwhelmed. That's when she felt it through the bond, Dracovar's tactical mind analyzing the battle, seeking patterns and weaknesses. He's watching, she understood. Even dying, he's trying to help. Through their connection, she felt his strategy crystallize. Northwest passage, strike team approaching, use them as hammer, you as anvil. He's coordinating rescue. Part of her wanted to reject his help to prove she needed nothing from the man who'd thrown her away. But the larger part, the part that cared about innocent lives, recognized tactical wisdom. Swallow your pride. Save your people. She shifted position, drawing the shadow wolves toward the passage entrance. Let them think she was retreating. Let them bunch up for the kill. Wait for it. Royal guards poured from the passage like avenging angels, crossbows and silver-edged blades cutting through shadow wolf ranks. Not rescue, she realized. Support. He sent them to help me fight, not extract me. He's letting me lead. The thought sent something electric through her system. For 3 years, every man she'd encountered had wanted to save her, protect her, make choices for her. Drekovar was finally trusting her to choose for herself. She threw herself back into battle with renewed fury. Around her, guards formed a fighting circle, not protecting her from the fight, but fighting beside her as equals. "This is what partnership looks like," her wolf observed. "This is what we could have had." Through their bond, she felt Drakovar's approval. Felt his tactical mind appreciating her combat instincts, her ability to adapt and overcome. "He sees me as I really am," she realized. Not a vessel to be used or a victim to be saved. A warrior, worth fighting alongside. "Too late," bitter experience whispered. 3 years too late. But even as cynicism tried to reassert itself, she couldn't deny the truth burning through their connection. This is who he should have been. Who he could have been if greed hadn't poisoned him. A shadow wolf alpha emerged from the darkness, larger than the others, moving with predatory intelligence. His eyes locked on hers with personal recognition. "The dead queen," he purred. "You've caused us considerable trouble." "Good," she snarled back. "I was aiming for considerable trouble." "No matter," the alpha continued, circling her like a stalking cat. "Your death tonight serves our purposes just as well as your cooperation would have." My death. Through the bond, she felt Drakovar's alarms spike, felt his desperate desire to reach her, to stand between her and danger, to protect her the way he should have years ago. But he was miles away and dying by degrees. This fight was hers alone. "No," she corrected herself, glancing around at the guards still standing with her. Not alone. Never alone again. The alpha lunged. Nyxara met him halfway, chains singing as they whipped through the air like silver lightning. Let's see what a dead queen can do. Victory tasted like blood and ashes. Nyxara stood over the Shadow Wolf Alpha's dissolving corpse, her silver fur matted with darkness that smelled like nightmares. Around her, palace guards counted their dead while survivors tended wounds that might never fully heal. "We won," her wolf noted with grim satisfaction. But at what cost? Too high. 3 guards dead, 7 wounded, and the scullery-maid sweet girl who'd shared her bread lay unconscious with claw marks across her face. This is what protecting others costs, she realized. Blood and sacrifice and losing pieces of yourself. The alpha's final words echoed in her mind like a death knell. "You think this changes anything? We withdraw now, but when your dying king draws his last breath, we return with the full pack. No kingdom, no hope, only shadows." Strategic retreat, she understood. They're not beaten, they're waiting for Drakovar to die. Through their bond, she felt him weaker now than he'd been during the battle. The effort of coordinating strategy had cost him precious energy he couldn't afford to lose. He's fading faster, she realized with cold clarity. Hours, not days. And when he dies, the kingdom dies with him. "My lady?" General Hawthorne approached, his armor dented but his respect genuine. "Your orders?" "My orders. Not the king's orders or council orders. Mine. Because I led this fight. Because they trust my judgment. Because somewhere in the last hour, I became their leader." "Double the perimeter guard," she commanded, shifting back to human form despite the iron chains still burning her wrists. "Shadow wolves will test our defenses again before dawn. But it won't matter," she thought grimly. "They're just buying time until nature does their work for them." Hawthorne nodded and moved to relay orders. Around her, guards and servants looked to her with something that made her chest tight. Hope. They think I can save them all. But as she limped toward the palace, ribs screaming, ankle throbbing, chains leaving bloody furrows in her skin, she felt the bitter truth settling in her bones. I can't save them by fighting. I can only save them by bleeding. By saving the man who threw me away. Through their bond, she felt Drakovar's awareness spike as she approached his chambers. Felt his desperate relief that she'd survived, mixed with soul-deep shame that she'd fought alone while he lay helpless. He knows, she realized. He knows what tonight cost, what tomorrow will cost if nothing changes. The thought should have satisfied her. Instead, it left her feeling empty. What good is vindication if everyone dies for it?
The war room felt like a tomb for dying hope. Drakovar slumped in his chair, black veins now visible beneath translucent skin. Each breath was a conscious effort, each heartbeat a minor miracle of will over poison. "Dying," his wolf whispered. "Finally dying." Around the table, his remaining commanders delivered reports that sounded like funeral eulogies. "Eastern territories have gone completely dark. General Hawthorne reported, his voice carefully neutral. No communication for 48 hours. Gone. Entire regions swallowed by shadow and silence. Western trade routes are compromised, another officer added. Merchant caravans found slaughtered, goods scattered, economic collapse following military collapse, his empire unraveling thread by thread while he sat helpless. How many civilian evacuees? He asked, though he already knew the answer would break something inside him. Roughly 3,000 reached the capital, Chancellor Aldrich replied, out of an estimated 50,000 from the affected regions. 47,000 dead or missing. The number hit him like a physical blow. My people. Dead because I'm too weak to protect them. Through their bond, he felt Nyxara's exhaustion, felt her sitting alone in her chambers, staring at walls and wrestling with impossible choices. She fought for them tonight, he thought. Bled for them while I commanded from a sickbed. And she's the only reason any survived. Sir, Aldrich's voice carried careful worry. The Shadow Wolf Alpha left a message before retreating. Of course he did. What did he say? That they'll return when? Aldrich swallowed hard. When your majesty draws your final breath. When I die. The unspoken truth everyone was thinking but couldn't voice. Strategic patience. Let time be their weapon. Dracovar closed his eyes, feeling the venom eating him alive one cell at a time. Soon, his wolf would separate completely from his human consciousness. Death would follow within hours. And then the kingdom falls. Not just his kingdom, the people who'd trusted him to protect them. The servants who'd served with loyalty. The guards who'd followed orders without question. The innocents who never chose to be part of his political games. Through their bond, he felt Nyxara's war between duty and self-preservation. Felt her counting the cost of every choice save him and enable his past cruelties. Or let him die and watch thousands suffer for it. She shouldn't have to make that choice, he realized. None of this should be her burden, but it was. Because of his greed, his ambition, his criminal stupidity in throwing away the one person who could have made him better. I did this, he thought with crystal clarity. Every death, every loss, every moment of terror, it all traces back to my choices, to choosing power over love. A messenger burst into the room, mud-stained and wild-eyed. Your Majesty, urgent report from the northern watchtowers. More bad news. There was nothing else anymore. Speak, he commanded, though his voice came out as barely a whisper. Shadow Wolf armies, sir, massing in the Thornwood, thousands of them. They're waiting for something, for me to die, for the kingdom to lose its last hope of unity. Through the walls, he could hear its starting panic spreading through the palace like wildfire. Servants whispering, guards exchanging worried glances, civilians who'd sought refuge realizing their sanctuary was built on sand. They know, he understood. Word is spreading, that I'm dying, and with it, their hope dies too. The messenger was still talking numbers, positions, tactical assessments, but Dracovar had stopped listening. Through their bond, he felt Nyxara rise from her chair, felt her walking toward his chambers with the slow, deliberate pace of someone approaching their own execution. She's coming, he realized. She's going to. What? Save me? Kill me? Put me out of my misery? All of the above?
The corridor leading to his chambers felt longer than the path to her own grave. Nyxara moved through shadows and moonlight, each step echoing like a funeral drum. Behind her, the palace buzzed with barely controlled panic. Word had spread that the king was dying, that shadow wolves massed at the borders, that hope was bleeding away drop by drop, just like he is. Through their bond, she felt his awareness of her approach, felt his resignation mixed with desperate hope not for salvation, but for absolution. He wants forgiveness, she realized. Not healing, not rescue. Just the knowledge that he didn't destroy everything good in the world. Too bad. His chamber door stood slightly ajar, spilling golden light across marble floors. Inside, she could hear his labored breathing, each exhale weaker than the last. Dying, her wolf observed. Finally, truly dying. Good, she told herself automatically. But the word felt like broken glass in her throat. She pushed through the door and found him propped against silk pillows, looking like a corpse someone had dressed in royal robes. Black veins covered his chest like poisonous tattoos, and his golden eyes had dulled to amber. This is what choosing power over love looks like, she thought. This is the cost of throwing away your soul. Nyxara. His voice was barely a whisper. You came. To watch you die, she almost said. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she moved to the chair beside his bed and sat down carefully, chains clinking against silk. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, two people who'd once shared everything, now separated by an ocean of betrayal and regret. "Why did you come?" she asked herself. "What do you hope to accomplish here?" "Closure," her practical mind suggested. To see him die and know it's finally over. But that wasn't true. If she'd wanted simple closure, she could have stayed in her chambers and felt his death through their bond. Then why? "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about what you said, about your choices, about how you threw me away for 3 territories and a handful of trade routes. And?" His voice carried no hope, only weary acceptance. "I've been wondering if you understand what those choices really cost." She leaned forward slightly, studying his dying face. "Not just what you lost, what you destroyed. Tell him," her wolf urged. "Make him understand." "I loved you," she continued, each word precise as a scalpel cut. "Not the king, not the crown. You, the man who used to laugh at my terrible jokes, who held me during thunderstorms, who made me feel like I was worth something. Past tense. Was. Used to. Never again." "I know," he whispered. "I remember. Do you?" She tilted her head, studying him like a predator evaluating prey. "Because I think you remember the idea of love, the concept. I don't think you remember what it felt like to be loved without conditions. The truth, Nyxara, give him the whole truth. When you rejected me, you didn't just break my heart," she continued relentlessly. "You broke my ability to trust that anyone would ever choose me. You made me believe I was fundamentally worthless, not worthy of love, not worthy of loyalty, not worthy of basic consideration. And that belief nearly destroyed me." His eyes closed, and through their bond, she felt his pain spike not from the venom this time, but from understanding. "You want to know why I've been refusing to save you?" she asked. "It's not just anger, it's self-preservation. Because the woman who loved you died that night, and I won't resurrect her just to watch you kill her again." There. The complete truth. The reason saving him feels like suicide, because it means believing in love again. And love had betrayed her so completely she'd lost herself entirely. Dracovar opened his eyes, and for a moment, they were clear, sharp. The man he'd once been looking out at her with perfect comprehension. "I killed you," he said simply. "Long before I staged your death, I killed the woman you were and left a ghost in her place. Yes, finally, he understands what he destroyed. And now that ghost has to choose," she continued, feeling something crack open in her chest. "Save the kingdom by bleeding for the man who murdered her heart, or let innocence die to protect what's left of her soul. The impossible choice. The one with no right answer." Outside, wind howled through the palace gardens where she'd fought for her life just hours ago, where she'd protected innocence while he lay dying in silk and gold. I became their protector, she realized, their leader, their hope. And now, I have to choose whether to destroy myself to save them. Through their bond, she felt his resignation deepen, felt him accepting that death was preferable to forcing her to sacrifice herself again. He's letting go, she understood, choosing to die rather than ask me to save him. After 3 years of selfish choices, he's finally thinking of someone else. Too late, her bitter heart whispered. Too little, too late. But even as cynicism tried to reassert itself, she couldn't ignore the larger truth. He's changed. Not enough to undo the past, but enough to face death with honor. And I have to choose who I want to be, victim or savior, ghost or woman, prisoner of the past or architect of the future. The choice hung between them like a blade, sharp enough to cut through 3 years of carefully constructed walls. Outside, shadow wolves howled in the distance, a reminder that dawn would bring darkness, that tomorrow would see the kingdom fall. Unless she chose differently, unless she chose to live again. Dawn broke like a promise of endings. Nyxara sat in the chair beside Dracovar's bed, watching him die by degrees. His breathing had grown so shallow she had to focus to see the rise and fall of his chest. Through their bond, she felt his consciousness flickering like a candle in wind. Hours, she realized. Maybe less. And when he dies, the kingdom dies with him. Outside the chamber windows, she could see palace staff moving with quiet desperation, packing valuables, preparing for evacuation, getting ready to abandon the capital when their king drew his last breath. Smart, her wolf observed. No point dying for a lost cause. But even as she thought it, her mind conjured images the scullery maid with claw marks across her face, the kitchen boy who'd reminded her of her lost brother, the groundskeeper whose gentle hands had tended roses despite the chaos. They're not politicians or soldiers, she realized. They're just people trying to survive in a world where kings play games with their lives, people who deserve protection regardless of who sits on the throne. Through their bond, she felt Dracovar's awareness spike, felt him surfacing from pain-clouded unconsciousness to find her still there. "You stayed," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I stayed to watch you die," she almost said. But the words wouldn't come, because sometime during the long night, watching him suffer, she'd realized something that made her chest tight. His death won't heal me. It won't undo the past or make the pain stop. It will just end things. And ending isn't the same as healing. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about what happens next. When you're gone, when the shadow wolves come, when innocent people die for choices they never made. The kingdom," he started, "will fall," she finished, "unless something changes. Unless someone chooses differently than you did. Unless someone puts people before pride." She stood and moved to the window, looking out at the gardens where she'd fought for her life, where she'd protected innocence while he lay helpless. "I could let you die," she continued, speaking to the window as much as to him. "It would be justice. Perfect symmetry. You chose power over love, so you die powerless and alone." Through their reflection in the glass, she saw him watching her with those dulled golden eyes. "But justice isn't the same as righteousness," her conscience whispered. "And righteousness sometimes requires sacrifice." "The people downstairs," she said aloud, "the ones preparing to flee, they never chose to be part of your political games. They just want to live safely, raise their children, tend their gardens, like I used to want, before you taught me that wanting was weakness. They deserve protection," she continued. "Even if their protector is a man who threw away his soul for 3 territories, even if protecting them means saving you." She turned from the window and found him watching her with something that looked like wonder. "You're going to," he started. "I'm going to bleed," she said simply. "Not for you, not for the kingdom, not even for forgiveness or redemption or any of the pretty words people use to make hard choices sound noble. For them, the innocents, the people who deserve better than dying for someone else's greed. I'm bleeding for the baker's daughter, who shared her bread with a stranger," she continued, moving back toward his bed. "For the stable boy who reminds me of my dead brother. For the groundskeeper whose roses don't deserve to wither because their king was a fool. And maybe for the woman I used to be, the one who believed love was worth any sacrifice." She sat down and reached for the ceremonial knife on his nightstand, silver blade inscribed with royal seals. "Sharp enough," she noted. "Clean enough. Don't mistake this for forgiveness," she warned, meeting his dying gaze. "I'm not saving you because I love you. I'm saving you because they deserve protection. And right now, you're the only protection they have. Even if you're broken, even if you're hollow, even if you're not worth saving yourself." The blade was cold against her palm. One quick cut, and her moon-blessed blood would purify the venom eating him alive. One cut to save a kingdom, one cut to destroy the last of her walls, one cut to choose love over safety. Through their bond, she felt his understanding, felt his recognition of what this choice would cost her, not just blood, but the protective numbness she'd built around her heart. Healing him means opening herself to pain again, to hope, to the possibility of being hurt. It means choosing to live instead of just surviving. Her hand trembled slightly as she raised the blade. "Do it," her wolf urged. "Choose who you want to be. Choose to be more than his victim." The knife bit into her palm, and silver blood welled bright as moonlight. "For them," she reminded herself. "For the innocents. For the woman you could become if you choose courage over safety." She pressed her bleeding hand to his chest, over his heart, and felt her blood burn like liquid fire as it entered his system. Let this be enough. Let this choice matter. Let love win, just once.
Life returned like lightning through his veins. Dracovar gasped as Nyxara's blood hit his system, not just healing, but purifying. The venom that had been eating him alive for months dissolved like morning mist, leaving him breathless with the sudden absence of pain. Alive, his wolf whispered in wonder. We're alive. But even as strength flooded back into his limbs, he was acutely aware of what this resurrection had cost her. Through their bond, now blazing bright as a silver cord between them, he felt her walls cracking. Felt the protective numbness she'd built around her heart starting to crumble. She's vulnerable again, he realized. Open to pain because she chose to save rather than destroy. The knowledge should have filled him with gratitude. Instead, it made him feel like the worst kind of thief. She gave up her safety to save my people, the people I was too weak to protect. How do you feel? She asked, her voice carefully neutral despite the blood still welling from her palm. Like I don't deserve this, he thought. Like I should have died and spared you the choice. Stronger, he said aloud. The venom is gone, and with it, his excuse for weakness. Through the windows, he could see the first signs of approaching shadow wolves, dark shapes moving through the forest like living nightmares. They'd felt the change through whatever supernatural senses they possessed. They know I'm healed, he understood. No, their timeline just shifted. They're coming, Nyxara observed following his gaze. Faster than expected, because they can't afford to let us consolidate power. They need to strike while we're still weak. Dracovar sat up carefully, testing his renewed strength. The black veins were fading from his skin, and his wolf stirred with familiar vitality. Ready for battle, the beast noted. Ready to protect what matters. What matters, not gold or territories or political advantages. The people downstairs preparing for evacuation. The servants who'd trusted him to keep them safe. The woman who'd bled to give him another chance. We need to move, he said, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. Coordinate defenses, before they reach the gates. The word slipped out automatically, but Nyxara's expression sharpened. We, she repeated softly. You think bleeding for you makes us partners again? No, he realized. Not partners, not like before. Something different, something that has to be earned. I think, he said carefully, that you've proven yourself the better strategist, the better leader. And I think I'd be a fool to waste that by trying to command you. True, all of it. She studied him for a long moment, storm-gray eyes searching his face for deception or manipulation. Finding none, he hoped, finding only truth. You want to follow my lead? She asked. I want to protect my people, he corrected. And you've already proven you can do that better than I can. Facts, not flattery. Through their renewed bond, he felt her surprise, felt her testing the edges of his sincerity and finding it genuine. She expected me to try reasserting control, he realized. Expected me to return to old patterns. Instead, I'm acknowledging what she's become. Outside, war horns began to sound, shadow wolves announcing their approach with supernatural howls that made windows rattle. Tactical assessment? He asked, deferring to her judgment. Let her lead. Let her choose how this ends. Nyxara moved to the window, studying the approaching threat with professional detachment. They're not trying to breach the palace, she said after a moment. They're surrounding it, planning to siege us into submission, starve us out rather than risk direct assault. Smart, he agreed. How do we counter? We. There it was again. But this time, she didn't challenge the pronoun. We don't, she said simply. We break their expectations. Of course, she'd always been better at thinking outside conventional patterns. Meaning? She turned from the window, and for a moment, he saw a flash of the woman she'd been brilliant. Fierce, unafraid of impossible odds. She's still in there, he realized. Buried under 3 years of pain, but still there. We go to them, she said. Before they're ready. Before they expect resistance. Offensive action instead of defensive posture. Audacious, risky, perfect. Together? He asked. Please say yes. Please let me fight beside you instead of watching from the sidelines. Her smile was sharp as winter moonlight. Together, she agreed. But Dracovar? Yes. This doesn't make us allies. It makes us temporarily aligned in purpose. Not partners, not lovers, not even friends. Just two people choosing to protect what matters. It wasn't redemption, but it was a beginning. A chance to prove that he could be better than his worst choices. A chance to fight for something larger than himself.
War came with the scent of midnight and malice. Nyxara stood in the palace's central courtyard, her silver wolf form gleaming under torchlight. Around her, Guards and servants formed defensive lines, not just soldiers anymore, but anyone willing to fight for their home. Everyone has something to protect, her wolf observed. Even the kitchen boy carries a knife. Beside her, Dracovar's black wolf paced with restless energy, healed but not forgiven, alive but not absolved. Two predators, different purposes. Through their bond, she felt his tactical mind, analyzing approach vectors and defensive positions, felt his wolf's eagerness to prove itself in battle. He wants redemption through combat, she realized. Thinks fighting beside me will somehow balance the scales. It won't, but it's a start. The shadow wolves emerged from darkness like nightmares given form, hundreds of them, moving with coordinated precision. No wild pack behavior. This was an army. They've been planning this for months, she understood, waiting for the right moment to strike, when the king was weak, when hope was dying, when resistance seemed impossible. Too bad for them. The alpha who'd spoken to her during the garden battle stepped forward, larger than the others, his eyes like black holes in reality. "The dead queen walks," he called across the courtyard. "How poetic. We killed you once before, indirectly, of course. Tonight we finish the work." "Once before?" Her wolf's attention sharpened. "What does he mean? You don't remember?" The alpha's smile revealed teeth like obsidian daggers. "The poisoned wedding gifts weren't random, little queen. We needed the king weak, desperate. We needed him to throw away the one thing that could save him." Understanding hit like a physical blow. They orchestrated it. All of it. The political marriage, the venom, even Dracovar's choice to reject her. They'd played them all like chess pieces. Through their bond, she felt Dracovar's shock and rage. Felt him realizing that his choice had been manipulation from the beginning. "Doesn't change anything," her practical mind noted. "He still chose power over love, still threw you away. But it explains why that choice felt so urgent, so necessary." Shadow wolves whispering in his ear, influencing his dreams, making ambition feel like survival. The alpha continued his gloating. 3 years of watching you both suffer, watching the kingdom crumble while its salvation rotted in exile. Perfect strategy. Was it, though? Nyxara studied the assembled shadow wolves, disciplined, yes, but also overconfident. They'd planned for a weak king and a broken kingdom. They hadn't planned for a queen who'd learned to fight alone, who'd learned to protect others without expecting protection in return, who'd discovered that love was stronger when it chose service over safety. "One problem with your perfect strategy," she called back to the alpha. "Let him think he's won. Let him get careless." "And what's that, dead queen?" Her smile was sharp as silver moonlight. "You forgot that some things grow stronger when they're broken." She didn't wait for his response. Her leap covered half the courtyard, a silver blur of fur and fury that hit the shadow wolf ranks like lightning. Around her, palace defenders followed her lead, turning the expected siege into chaotic melee. This is what partnership looks like, she thought as Dracovar's black wolf appeared at her flank. Not romance. Not submission. Two predators hunting the same prey. They moved like liquid death through shadow wolf ranks, her speed and precision complementing his strength and tactical awareness. No wasted motion. No grandstanding, just efficient violence in service of protection. Through their bond, she felt his approval. Felt him recognizing her as an equal, not something to be saved or used, but a warrior worthy of respect. Finally, 3 years too late, but finally, the battle raged around them, silver against shadow, hope against despair, love against manipulation. Let's see which proves stronger. The shadow alpha lunged for her throat. Nyxara was ready for him. Time to finish this. Death had a face, and it wore shadow like a crown. The alpha's claws raked across Nyxara's ribs as they rolled through blood-soaked courtyard stones. Around them, the battle raged, silver wolves and palace defenders holding the line against overwhelming darkness. "We're losing," her wolf observed with grim practicality. "Too many of them. Not enough of us. But we're not running. Never again." The alpha's weight pressed her down, obsidian teeth snapping toward her throat. "Should have stayed dead, little queen. Should have let the king rot like we planned. Like you planned." The knowledge burned through her that her exile, Dracovar's choice, even the political marriage had all been orchestrated. 3 years of suffering, because shadow wolves needed the kingdom weak. Doesn't change what he did, her conscience reminded her. Manipulation explains, but it doesn't excuse. True. But it makes forgiveness possible. She twisted beneath the alpha's bulk, feeling his claws tear through fur to the flesh beneath. Pain blazed white-hot, but pain was an old friend now. I've survived worse. Through their bond, she felt Dracovar's desperation as he fought his own battles across the courtyard, felt him wanting to reach her, to protect her, but unable to break free from his own opponents. Good, she thought fiercely. This is my fight, my choice, my chance to prove that love doesn't make you weak, it makes you dangerous. The alpha's jaws closed around her throat. Now or never. She shifted not to wolf, but to human form. The sudden change in size and shape threw off his grip, and she rolled free with silver blood streaming from bite wounds. Human form in a wolf fight? Her beast protested. That's suicide. No, that's strategy. Human hands could do things wolf paws couldn't, like grab the ceremonial dagger from her belt, the one she'd used to slice her palm and save a dying king, the one still stained with moon-blessed blood. The alpha lunged again, expecting easy prey. He got silver steel between his ribs instead. Her blood still coating the blade burned through his shadow stuff like acid through silk. The alpha's howl of agony split the night, and suddenly every shadow wolf in the courtyard was staring. Moon-blessed mate blood, she realized. Poisonous to shadow wolves. Because love is antithetical to their existence. Because choosing others over yourself is the opposite of everything they represent. The alpha dissolved into smoke and screaming malice, but his death cry carried a message that made her blood freeze. Not a death cry, a summons. He's calling the rest of the pack, all of them. Through the bond, she felt Dracovar's understanding spike, felt his tactical mind calculating odds and finding them impossible. Hundreds more shadow wolves, his thoughts whispered. Coming fast. We can't win. Unless, the idea hit her like lightning. Terrible. Dangerous. Possibly suicidal. But it might work. She pressed her bleeding hand to her throat, feeling where the alpha's teeth had torn her skin. Her moon-blessed blood welled bright against pale flesh. If her blood could kill one shadow wolf, if she could get it into the air, into their lungs, into their very essence. One cut, deep enough to matter, quick enough to work before they stop you. Through their bond, she felt Dracovar realize what she was planning, felt his horror and desperate negation. Don't, his thoughts screamed. There has to be another way. There isn't, she replied through their connection. And you know it. She raised the dagger to her throat. Not suicide. Sacrifice. Not giving up. Giving everything. For the people worth protecting. For the kingdom that could be. For the man who'd finally learned what love actually costs. The blade touched skin. For the woman I choose to be. No longer victim. No longer exile. No longer afraid to love because love might hurt. Queen. Protector. Hope. She drew the blade across her throat, not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to spray silver blood into the air like benediction, like blessing, like the most powerful magic in any world. Love freely given. The blood hit shadow wolf ranks like holy water on demons. Screams echoed across the courtyard as darkness dissolved into nothingness, unable to exist in the presence of such pure sacrifice. It worked, her fading consciousness observed. Love won. Finally, love won. The last thing she felt before darkness claimed her was Dracovar's wolf calling her name, and her own voice answering, I choose you, all of you, forever.
Silver blood painted the courtyard stones like spilled moonlight. Dracovar's human hands shook as he pressed cloth against Nyxara's throat, trying to slow the bleeding that had saved them all. Around them, shadow wolf corpses dissolved into mist and memory, banished by her sacrifice. She's dying, his mind whispered. Dying because she chose to save everyone. Dying because love made her brave enough to risk everything. Through their bond, now blazing bright as a silver cord between souls, he felt her consciousness flickering. Felt her holding on by pure will, refusing to leave him alone with the weight of what she'd done. Don't you dare, he thought fiercely. Don't you dare die after showing me what courage actually looks like. Palace healers swarmed around them, hands gentle but urgent. Master healer Corin knelt beside Nyxara's still form, his expression grim. The bleeding is slowing, he reported. But she's lost so much blood, the blood that saved the kingdom, the blood that saved my soul. She'll live, Dracovar said with absolute certainty. Because she has to. Because the world needs her in it, because I need her in it, not as queen to my king, but as the woman who taught me what real strength looks like. Through the bond, he felt her awareness surface slightly, felt her testing the edges of consciousness like someone checking if it was safe to hope. It is, he told her silently. It's safe. You won. Love won. Her storm gray eyes opened slowly, focusing on his face with effort that spoke of tremendous will. Did it work? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Did saving everyone work? Did choosing love over safety accomplish what you hoped? He gestured toward the courtyard where palace staff were emerging from hiding, where servants and guards and common folk were helping each other stand, checking for wounds, celebrating survival, where people were choosing community over fear. Look for yourself, he said softly. She turned her head carefully, taking in the scene with eyes that missed nothing. The shadow wolves were gone, not just defeated, but unmade by contact with love freely given, by contact with her choice to protect rather than preserve herself. The kingdom, she asked. Safe. The shadow wolves are gone, all of them. Your blood, he swallowed hard. Your sacrifice broke whatever dark magic was sustaining them, and showed him what real sacrifice looked like, not throwing someone away for power, but throwing yourself away for protection. She was quiet for a long moment, processing what her choice had accomplished. And now, she asked finally, now what? Now that you've saved everyone? Now that you've proven love is stronger than fear? Now I have to prove I'm worth the woman who bled for my people. Now, he said carefully, we figure out how to rebuild. Together, if you'll have me. Separately, if you won't. Your choice. Always your choice. I've made enough choices for both of us. Her smile was faint but real. Together, she said. But Dracovar? Yes. We're starting over. From the beginning. No assumptions. No taking anything for granted. No believing that bleeding for you means trusting you. Fair. More than fair. Truth. I understand, he said. What do you need from me? Tell me how to earn back not just your love, but your basic respect. Her gaze held his storm gray eyes serious as winter skies. Time, she said simply. Time to see if the man who sent soldiers to support rather than rescue me is real. Time to see if you've actually learned what love costs. Time to prove that crisis didn't just temporarily change me, it permanently transformed me. Time to show that I finally understand the difference between ruling over someone and ruling beside them. I have time, he said. All the time she needs. All the time we both need to become the people we should have been from the beginning. Around them, the kingdom began the slow work of healing, not just from shadow wolf attacks, but from the deeper wounds of fear and mistrust, led by a queen who'd proven that love was worth any risk, and a king who was finally learning what that meant.
3 months later, the throne room looked like a place where hope lived. Nyxara stood before the assembled court, no longer in chains but in silver silk that caught the light like moonbeams. Beside her, not behind, not in front, but beside, Dracovar wore the crown with less arrogance and more responsibility than she remembered. 2 thrones, her wolf observed with satisfaction. Equal height, equal position, equal respect. The court had fought the idea at first. Tradition demanded one ruler, one voice, one ultimate authority. Tradition, she'd pointed out, had nearly gotten them all killed. Time for new traditions. The Eastern Territories report successful resettlement, Chancellor Aldrich announced, consulting his reports. Trade routes are reopening. Border villages are requesting patrol schedules. Recovery. Not just from shadow wolf attacks, but from the fear that had preceded them. People choosing to live instead of just survive. Approved, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. Around them, nobles who'd once whispered about the dead queen now listened with genuine respect. Respect earned through blood and sacrifice, through choosing others over self, through proving that love made you stronger, not weaker. Beside her, Dracovar nodded agreement. Double the patrol schedules for the first month. People need to feel safe before they can start building again. We, us, people. Not subjects or resources or political assets. People. Through their bond rebuilt slowly, carefully, on foundations of truth rather than desperation, she felt his genuine commitment to protection over power. He's changed, she acknowledged. Not perfect. Not completely trustworthy yet, but changed. Learning what it means to serve instead of rule. Your Majesties? A young voice piped up from the crowd. the kitchen boy grown taller in 3 months, but still carrying himself with careful dignity. "My lady, there's someone here to see you." Someone, not a petitioner or dignitary or political necessity. "Someone? Who?" she asked gently. "Says she's your cousin, from the mountain clans." Nyxara's breath caught. Family, living family, when she'd thought herself completely alone in the world. Someone who knew her before the crown and chains and careful political calculations. Someone who might remember the girl she'd been. Through their bond, she felt Dracovar's understanding, felt him recognizing this moment as important in ways that transcended politics. "Bring her in," he said quietly. "Family doesn't wait in antechambers. Family doesn't wait." Another new tradition. The throne room doors opened to admit a woman with storm-gray eyes and silver-streaked hair. Familiar features aged by years and hardship, but unmistakably kin. "Nyxara?" the woman whispered, her voice carrying across the vast hall. "Is it really you? Alive. Not just surviving, but alive. Choosing love over safety, community over isolation, hope over bitter resignation." Nyxara descended from her throne, their throne, and crossed the marble floor to embrace family she'd thought lost forever. "This is what winning looks like," her wolf observed as strong arms wrapped around her. "Not conquest or domination or accumulating power. Connection. Love freely given and received. The courage to be vulnerable. The strength to choose others over yourself." Behind her, she felt Dracovar's approval through their bond. Felt him understanding that this moment, this choice to prioritize personal connection over royal dignity, was exactly what made her a worthy queen. Not despite her capacity for love, but because of it. Because she'd learned that the best rulers were those who served something larger than themselves. As the court watched their queen embrace a mountain clan woman with tears streaming down both their faces, something shifted in the throne room's atmosphere. Hope. The recognition that power could be used for protection instead of domination. That love was the strongest foundation for any kingdom.